What up, guys? It's Yui from Strictly Broken, and today I'm doing a deck profile. Phantasmal Steed just came out, and I was really excited for Phantasmal Steed because I like basically only play Pale Moon in Standard. I like Premium better, but Pale Moon, I'm a big fan of it. And Pale Moon was not very good for the past two sets that they got support for. But this one looked pretty promising, and I was just really excited to build Lukier. Yeah, so this is a Lukier deck profile, Silverthorne. And yeah, let's just get straight to it. I always use this mat when I play Waste. It's like I played it at every Worlds I played at. I use this mat, so I will use it for this deck profile too. You obviously got to start with the Silverthorne starter. There's not anything to say with this. The fact that this is a Silverthorne starter really helped make the deck better. There's play patterns where this really does help you get you to 4 really early on for like a 19k swing. So yeah, this card's really just a starter. The boss monster for Lukiers, Silverthorne Lukier. So if you call 2 or more rear guards out from soul, passive 10k on Vanguard and rear, and then cost effect is counterblast 2, ditch 1, call any number of Silverthorns from your soul to the field, front row against 3k. So very powerful card. The fact that you can plus just plus just a ton is kind of insane board wise. This card, the way it's designed, makes it so that Silverthorne, the hand you generate in Silverthorne can be committed 100% to guard. Once you get out of the early game, that is. Once you're out of the early game, your hand is 100% committed to guard. So versus other decks that you have to think about what you want to keep in terms of your resource for attacking stuff next turn. You just don't care. Your hand's just all guard for power, and that's it's very good because you don't really lose to. Sometimes people go through these turn cycles of triggering a bunch of triggers, drawing into a bunch of triggers, and then they have a really weak Excel turn the following turn after that. But Silverthorne doesn't have that problem. What you do run into with the effect, the big problem is people counterblast denying you. And being at 5 is really awkward too. Sometimes being at 5 is really awkward because you have that odd number of damage, and if you use the effect twice, you can't countercharge in this deck effectively and proc a Silverthorne effect. So unless you play, there's a card that can solve that. But yeah, the card's main weakness is that it's super counterblast heavy. You need to kind of weave in counter charges or get a heal somewhere down the line to get the 3rd proc off in a game. But if you, sometimes it's just 2 Silverthorns is sometimes enough to just blow out the game. You make such large numbers. This on rear is also pretty insane. This on the 2 rears that aren't excels, boosted by an 8k, is what? It's 30, 33? 12, 22, 30, yeah, 33. It's really, it's a perfect number against Forest. It's just a good number against Excel too. They have to hit 3 defensive triggers for this not to hit. And then once you trigger fronts, it's just really strong. It's a really good card in general. Good as a van, good as a rear. For Dorians, she, I think, is what makes this deck kind of over the edge a bit. Definitely this card really helps. So while this card pluses the field, typically plussing the field is good, but the weakness of that is that you're not plussing to hand, and then you die because you don't have enough shield and guard. What this card does is, on Vanguard or rear guard, end of turn, suck up all your field, draw a card for every 2 you suck up. If you sucked up 4 or more, add a Silverthorne grade 3 to your hand, and if it's on rear, it gets retired. So this is typically your first grade 3 ride, because when you're setting up for strong Lukier turns, the first grade 3 ride, if you ride her and you call out 4, you can suck up 4. If one of the ones you called out was Lukier, you can just add that straight back to hand. Draw 2 cards, and because it's on Van, you don't have to retire her. And so when you re-ride into Lukier the next turn, and you use Lukier's effect, you already have this ready to go for a 2nd proc. So that's how you get 2 procs of it off with 1 copy. Yeah, this card is your ideal first ride. It lets you be fairly aggressive with your first grade 3 ride turn, right? So say you go first. Sometimes Excel decks don't even want to commit that hard when they go first, which is really, really bad, because if you went first, that's first grade 3 turn is like the best time to commit because your opponent's on grade 2 and you can make some columns with that fact. So this card helps you commit because by investing 4 cards onto the board, you're getting 3 back. So you're only losing 1 card to commit hard on first grade 3 turn going first. Overall, like I said, this card pluses the field, this card pluses the hand. And so the 2 together is just like a very beautiful combo. It makes your hand like, sometimes honestly, Luke here has like a 10 plus card hand. And you can just survive like at any turn with that kind of hand. You usually don't want to use, something to note, you don't want to use this card more than maybe like 3-4 times in a game because you actually will deck out. Decking out is like one of the big weaknesses of this deck. So yeah. Grade 2s, I run 4 of this card, which is essentially a 19k, and 4 of this card, which is another 19k. This card is 19k when you have 4 or more differently named Silverthorns in your soul. And this is 19k when you call 2 or more cards out from soul during that turn. So this card has a secondary effect, which is counterblast 1 on Vanguard or Rearguard to put a Silverthorne from deck to soul. And what these 2 cards, the difference is, like, this is an early game 19k and this is a late game 19k. Reasoning for that is early game, it's really hard to actually set up a situation where you have 4 differently named Silverthorns in the early game. It's hard. Without minusing and doing a bunch of needless calls, you probably won't have 4 differently named. So this card's really good because you just like proper Luke here effect, call 2 of these out, they're still 19k and that's great. Subsequent grade 3 turns and like the late game, this card's really good because when you stop calling out Dorian and sucking up your board, if you like make a board with like multiples of these, if your opponent doesn't attack rear, which they probably won't because you're at like 4 or 5, they want to kill you, right? This can hit for 19 on that turn. On Excel is 24, with Luke here it's 27. So 27 optimally on the first turn, and then if it survives, it's 19 again, right? This won't be because you're not calling out 2. After the second or third Luke here proc, you're never using Luke here's effect again. So you really want something that can still hit for 24, 24, 24. This will only be 14. So that's like the big difference here, right? So they're good for different scenarios. It's kind of a toss-up when you will see the one you want, because, you know, there's no guaranteed way to soul charge except for this card, and you don't really want to use it very often because Counterblast is like a very essential resource to do Luke hero effects. But if you get the play pattern of these first into these, you're just solid for the game. Next grade 2 is just 2 copies of 15k shield. What it basically does to get 15k shield is if you have 4 differently named Silverthorns in your soul, when you call it the Guardian Circle, it goes to soul and plus 15k shield. You won't get the extra 5k because the cost is to put itself to soul. But 15k on a grade 2 is really good. What it basically means is, like, this card sets you up for differently named Silverthorns, and it's just an extra 15k shield. Not every deck gets extra 15ks like that. Downside of this card is having multiples is really bad. Riding it first is really awful. 8k is just not where you want to be in Vanguard. If they went first, you cannot hit on a 9 against Protect, against Excel either. Like, this deck already, like, sometimes struggles when Force goes first because they're swinging on a 10. And then add 8 into the mix and you're just done. You're just screwed. So you don't want to ride it. It's also really bad early game because, like I said, early game is sometimes hard to have 4 differently named Silverthorns in soul. So I think 2 is the perfect number. Makes it so like you don't see it like too early on, like too many copies early on. I think seeing like multiples in your hand early game is like an absolute brick. You can live with 1 because if you did go first, 8 still hits on you can go like rear 8s and pressure them harder. But yeah, going second, this card is just awful early game. Final grade 2, and this is like, honestly, this card is kind of needed. Knife Dancer. It's not a Silverthorne name, which is a big deal. You don't get a soul charge it off of certain effects. You don't get to, yeah, it's like it increases your non-Silverthorne count, so you can whiff off some grade 1 effects. But it's like really needed because what it basically does is if you have no face-up counterblast at the end of the turn, put it to soul, countercharge 1. And it works. The ruling on these 2 cards is that you can do them simultaneously, and so this effect will proc, and this effect will proc counting this card as a name, counting this card as one of the cards still. So, it basically means committing this doesn't actually mess up your Dorian turns, and committing this, like, here's a play pattern. You go to 2 damage, you use the first Luke here, and then you have this on rear guard, you call this to rear. Then at the end of the turn, you can countercharge 1, so you go to 1 face down, 1 face up. If you're basically allowed to take, when that already happens, you're basically able to do 2 more Luke here's in that game. But if you can set up a play pattern where you can go take 1 damage, and the next turn Luke here again, and then have one of these countercharge, you can actually weave in a 4th. So it's like, that play never happens because crit pressure is a thing. But like, the ability for that to happen is why you should play 3. You want to see it early for sure. Having 1 copy basically guarantees that you'll be able to do a 3rd Luke here, which once you can do a 3rd one, you're usually good to go to win the game. This card secondarily helps you be able to proc some of your counterblock skills. So like, it lets you use the grade 2 once in a while, the 19k effect, and then it lets you use this dragon, which I'll show next. Sometimes you can get off a dragon proc because of this card. So yeah, you play 3 of them. 4 I think is too many. That's a big thing. It's not Silverthorne named, which is just really unfortunate. I play the grade 3 lion before I play a 4th, a knife dancer. That's for sure. Grade 1's 4 of this card. This card is, you rarely want to be using this effect. Using this effect is not where you want to be playing this deck. Basically, when it boosts, you can counterblast 1, put the boosted unit to soul, call to Silverthorne from soul. You can only do this when you have 4 or more differently named Silverthorns in your soul. And the reason why you don't want to be doing this card too often is because, yeah, the counterblast is like a really big deal. As I said, counterblast is a huge resource. We're even playing a non-named grade 2 just so that we can pull off a 3rd effect. So why would we want to be using the counterblast to do things? But it's there because sometimes if you have multiples of these in hand, you can kind of cheese people with an extra swing, force them to give up more guard, force them to take a damage, put them at higher damage. And some people just don't expect it, right? So like, when you end up using this effect, I think the play pattern against your opponents will be like, they never expect you to use the effect. They never expect you to use the effect, but you know what your hand is. So sometimes you'll use the effect, catch them off guard. They might be forced to take the attack, and maybe already have the knife dancer in hand for like the next turn. Randomly, this card can also, if you sometimes set up a board that doesn't have Dorian in it, this card can pivot the card of boost into Dorian. Because like, say you went bad hand, you're at Silverthorne, you call out stuff, you call this out, and then you end up soul charging the Dorian off that. This card can pivot the card of boost into Dorian, so that's kind of relevant. It's like the only way the deck can pivot a card after the Luke here effect from soul, so that's randomly relevant. This card, its effect is to rest itself, go to soul, look at top 3, put any number of Silverthorns into the soul, and bomb deck the others. So stacking potential, like Tsukiyomi, because it doesn't shuffle, you can basically stack the effect. If you use 2 multiples, you can like put a front on top, put another front on top, and then remember where the stack is, and then trigger double front. So that is pretty good. Other than that, you don't really want to be using the effect too often because, like I said, the deck does deck out. I think one of the big ways the deck loses is by decking out. In theory, you can actually like use Dorian a ton of times, but you don't want to because of the risk of decking out. So using this card too many times is definitely risky. Another thing to note is that this card is a pretty decent booster when you're playing against Force. So like, let's say you ride the 9 and they're on 10 already. This card can boost first and make the calm swing and hit. And then later, when it goes to soul off like a Dorian, if you call it out with like a, it doesn't even need to go soul for Dorian. Like if you ride like, let's say Luke here, you can put this to soul. If you find 2 cards, you're getting the minus back off the Luke here effect. So the minus is like a minus, but if you can find good rear guards to put into the soul, you can recover that minus. So the minus is actually not that bad sometimes. Even off like the Dorian turn, committing the card is actually not bad because Dorian can just suck it up. But you don't really want to use the effect on the Dorian turn. So it's like only applies to like if you ride Luke here, suck up, if you find 2, you can recover the cards. And maybe even find Dorian. So yeah, that's that card. And then finally, 4 copies of Irina. This card's actually insane. Put the SP in front. Want to buy 3 more SPs? Hit me up. So Irina is really good. Best ride grade 1. When she gets rode on, you look at top 3, put any number of Silverthorns into soul. If you put 2 or more, you get to draw 1. So that's just a free draw. You don't even need to pay CB. When this card works, I think you're really far ahead in terms of resource. You can even start committing like multi-attacking, grade 2, just pressuring them really hard. Yeah, riding this is like so good. It sets up even like Luke here. You can sometimes pull off like a really cheesy first grade 3 turn Luke here when you ride this card. So yeah, card's awesome. When you don't ride it, her other rearguard effect is it does the, what's it called? I don't even know what's called, box something. Check top 2, put 1 to soul, bottom deck the other. Card, that effect's also okay. It lets you set up soul, like I said, once again. So if you had to like commit this on grade 3 turn, if you're on Dorian, this is a pretty good card to commit because it does something else besides the draw. Helps you set up, so it's like progressing your game state. Solid card, very good card. So sell me SPs. For triggers, 8 front, pew pew, 8 front. 4 of them are Silverthorne fronts, 4 of them are not Silverthorne fronts. There's an argument to play 2 to 4 crits because so when people realize you play 8 fronts, they start taking the van. If you have like 2 to 4 crits in the deck, you can catch them off guard. And like, if they take the van and they get critted on, you're just really far ahead if they don't hit defensive. So yeah, right now I'm doing 8 fronts. Main reason is because the front turns are actually insane. You make columns that can be like 37, 47 if you treat double front. And yeah, I really think it's probably better to do like 6 front, 2 crit. The crit is Silverthorne too, which actually is a pretty big deal. Like this is not Silverthorne named, so you can play 2 more Silverthorne named cards. Any other reasons for crit? Yeah, it's just mainly the taking Vanguard situation. Running 8 fronts always puts you at the risk that opponent doesn't have to commit more to guard Vanguard swings. They can just freely take the Vanguard swing. And then when you mix front and crit into the mix, if they ever give a 2 to pass and you trigger front first, it's like really, really valuable for you because like front is kind of the dummy trigger because it stacks everyone, right? So like you really kind of want to play crits, but 8 fronts for now. We'll see if I want to commit like 2 to 4 crits in the deck. 4 heals, obviously. You're not playing a deck in standard right now without heals. And then 4 draw PGs. There is an argument to playing the grade 1 PG. Because the deck does draw a lot of cards. The draw can sometimes be detrimental in the late game. But I like the defensive draw against Excel. I like the fact that the PG can get you the PG dish target off of the drive check. So I like that for now. The big advantage of playing grade 1 draw is to play Silverthorne crits. So like now you have 8 fronts, 4 crits, 4 heal. That's like really strong. That's really strong actually. So I can definitely see playing crits over this and then playing grade 1 PG. I'm probably going to test it out because now you have I just want to fit in crits. I think crits makes Excel decks that have a lot of fronts just even better. But for now, 4 draw PGs. And yeah, that's the deck. I'm gonna put this out for a show. As for marker conversation, really quick, you have the Excel ones, but you're usually making Excel 2 because your columns are big enough so that the draw is probably just better. But definitely there's an argument for this. Like if you're playing against like older bad decks that don't have support yet, you can go with this and you can pressure them even harder because they just don't have enough. You're drawing so many cards and they don't have enough power to really get through your cards every turn. And then you get like an extra 5k, so now you can go like 32 on those columns. But yeah, against like most decks, you're making Excel 2. You usually put the 19ks on the Excel 2. After Luke here, they're like 27. And yeah, you usually will only make 4 Excels in a game. So if you go to a tournament, you should probably bring 6 though, because you might make a 5th. But by the time you make a 6th, you're probably already dead because you've decked out. You can like infinitely ride with this deck. Not infinitely, but you can ride the grade 3 a lot because of Dorian's effect, but you just don't end up because you deck out. Anything else? Not really. That's the deck profile. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Like us on Facebook, everything. check out our store. We have all these singles up on the store right now. And yeah, it's Yui signing off from Strictly Broken. Peace.